Thank you for joining us today. My name is Sally Berkery. I'm the Managing Director of CEW UK. On Monday, we celebrated International Women's Day 21, where the theme was Choose to Challenge. A challenged world is an alert world, and individually we're responsible for our own thoughts and actions all day and every day. We can all choose to challenge and call out gender bias and inequality. We can all choose to seek out and celebrate women's achievements. And collectively, we can all help to create an inclusive world. From challenge comes change. And with that in mind, I'm really delighted to welcome full-time coach and mentor, Peter Soer, who we know is a Colin the Caterpillar lover now, who is also going to run through this workshop for us today, where we will be addressing imposter syndrome, what it is, why it happens, how we deal with it. And he'll also share some practical steps to help us beat that feeling and in turn increase our confidence and enable us to both enjoy and increase our success. We all want that, surely. You should all have received your Explorer's Guide, so please feel free to make notes throughout. And we hope that this will provide a practical and actionable takeaway for you. As we've said in the build-up during the session, that it's going to be interactive. So I hope you all feel comfortable. Please raise your hand when asked. You can find the icon at the bottom of the screen. And it's really just, this session's intended to be very positive, and I'm certain we'll all benefit. I, for one, have been looking forward to it for weeks. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to you, Peter. Thank you.
No, thank you. And I'm just going to do that. So if the tech gods are with us, then we've got a chart up there as well. So that's wonderful. Thank you, Sally, and Carrie and Eleanor and Alison. So I've had the good luck to interact now with a number of CEW members and colleagues. It's really an honor, really a privilege to be here with you today, and to see as many of you as I can do in the bar, and I should be scrolling up and down. And if your bandwidth allows, it would be lovely if you'd all have your cameras on. Certainly we'll want you to have your cameras on when you go out into your breakout rooms. But I know some people have bandwidth issues, but this is, as I think you sort of had in the pre-material, this is not one of those sessions to be doing 2 or 3 podcasts at the same time, because we're sort of hoping that you'll, it's a sleeves rolled up sesh, at least after the first session's got quite a lot of content I'm sharing at the beginning, but once we get into it, there's lots of opportunity for interaction and self-discovery. So with no further ado, yes, so I am Peter Soer. I've been a full-time coach since 2016. I do some of that through my own company, Bravely, Honestly, Generously. Obviously you can find online, or you can find me on LinkedIn. And I affiliate with a couple of other coaching providers, one in Harvard, which focuses mostly on the area of personal purpose, and one in London, which is a sort of boutique-y C-suite coaching group. Before that, I was 28 years, oh no, it can't be true, I hear you say, in marketing, business leadership, and the last 10 of those in quite big roles at Unilever and in Kellogg's. So my penultimate role at Unilever was running what is now called the Unilever Sustainable Living Plan. And my last role there, I ran the global oral care category, so toothpaste and toothbrushes. And at Kellogg's, I was the CMO for EMEA. And I will always love marketing and brands and consumers and insight and beauty. And, I ran Axe in Europe for a period of time, which was just top fun. But as the years went on, and in the last years, I became more and more interested in the area of leadership and leading and organization. And why is it that sometimes leaders cast a light and at other times shine a light and at other times they cast a shadow? Why do teams sometimes work well and not? And so I became more and more clear that leadership is the key to success. So is the leader, so is the culture, so is the culture, so is the organization. And this is so key to driving inclusive and diverse leadership, in particular, inclusive and diverse leadership teams. I also went through facing my own imposter feelings, and I'll come back to that later. And I suppose all these threads came together to make me believe in the power of coaching to help develop diverse leadership teams, and in particular to enable more women into senior leadership roles. So a lot of my coaching is with women, rising women, helping them to succeed in new roles and transitions, because I genuinely believe that if we have more diverse teams, and let's start with women, but obviously beyond that, people of colour, LGBTQ+, people who are atypical with regards to ability, we will by definition have inclusive teams and better culture. So we're here today to have a look at beating imposter syndrome, and if we do, and therefore enjoying and increasing success. Why is that important? Well, because we know that inclusive and diverse teams perform better, they create healthier culture, they do better business. But people in the minority, and this is often women in male-dominated industries, for example, creative industries or technological industries, often suffer from imposter feelings. And this affects their ability to be the best they can be, to succeed and to stay long enough through into senior leadership positions so that they can affect culture, as we were just discussing. And thus, developing the talent pool to be more diverse is so important. And at an individual level, if we are suffering these feelings, we're not being the best we can be. We're not achieving the success that we perhaps yearn for. And even when we do get success, we often are so sort of happy that we got there, we forget to really enjoy it. So what will we do today? We're going to cover what is imposter syndrome, why it happens, how the behaviours reward and limit us, and some practical steps you can take to beat the feelings, increase your confidence, and so enjoy and increase your success. How will we do that? Well, it'll be a combination of me talking in plenary, then you doing some exploration, sometimes alone, most often in your breakout groups, and then sometimes sharing back in plenary. And as Sally said, you've each got your explorer's guide, which is somewhere where you can be taking notes, and in particular, when we get to the reflections, writing stuff down and using that to crystallize your thoughts. The longest section of my talking is going to be the bit after we do our first little breakout now. And after that, it's quite quick fire between plenary and breakout. But in that section, I've got some content I think it's important to share to give us the foundations. And my hope is that at the end of today, everybody will have at least one new liberating insight and at least one actionable behavioral change. And we'll have a little check at the end. And if we've achieved that, then I would like to think that's been a good use of a couple of hours. In case some of you are thinking now, oh, what am I doing in this session? I've never had an imposter feeling in my life. Please don't feel you need to leave, because you probably know lots of other people who have. And so what you might learn today can be useful in how you work with others. And if we do achieve those insights, then I think we'll be more likely to take opportunities to learn, grow, be the best you can be. And when you're doing that, to role model and pass on the gift to others, colleagues, daughters, aunts, friends. So without further ado, what I would love is if Carrie's going to take you into your breakout groups, which will be sort of groups of 4 or 5. You get 5 minutes to run around your screen group, your breakout team, and introduce your name, what you do at which company, and a hope you have for this session, right? No life stories, 1 minute each, quick fire, name, what you do at what company, and a hope for the session, and we'll bring you back in 5 minutes. So lovely to have you back. Hope you managed to zip round your group. I think we had one group that just had 2, and Carrie's going to, we've got a recent arrival, so that group will turn into 3 next time around, which is lovely. Could a couple of people just share something that came up in their group that a hope for the session? Anybody, be brave and be the first person to unmute and
I don't mind going.
Great.
So I'm Vanessa, I'm head of retail for Dermalogica, and we've got a few from the retail team at Dermalogica on here. But I just shared, I think, not only for ourselves, but we're looking to take tips and just more knowledge on imposter syndrome away, because we have a team of over 100 skin therapists, and they are all female. And I think we employ therapists who haven't been through management positions. So when they do step into those business account manager, district positions, it's us really ensuring that they have the confidence that they can do the role, because we wouldn't put them in the roles if we didn't feel they could do it. But often there is nervousness there and anxiety with that management side.
Beautiful. Thank you, Vanessa, for being first. There's only one first, huh? Okay, who's next? One more.
I'm happy to go.
Yeah.
So there was a few different elements that came up. One was that actually, how do you feel versus your male colleagues? I think a lady called Amy that I've just met made a really good point that actually we're in the beauty industry, and essentially it tends to be dominated by women. And what you find is the higher up you get, the more males you get.
Yeah.
And that's probably one of the biggest takeouts that I personally took from that session. Also was building on our own confidence, building on our own ability, knowing that we're brilliant at what we do, therefore we should be able to pass that on to others, and also helping and supporting develop teams and not taking on the world yourself, and knowing how to work and develop with other teams as well.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. And even just in those two, so that sounds like you're already having really rich discussions. Thank you. You know, the areas of confidence, passing it on to others. How is it difference between men and women? We can do a masterclass afterwards if anybody wants to stay on to chat about how is it that it always turns out to be mostly men at the top, and they talk a good game but don't always change much beneath. We can come back to that, but we're not covering that in the main session. But thank you both for sharing. Beautiful. All right, so let's carry on, and I'd like to start by acknowledging Dr. Valerie Young, who's written what I believe to be the book in this area, The Secret Thoughts of Successful Women. She's a well-known workshop leader, speaker, writer in this space, and a good chunk of what I'm talking about today is based on her original thinking. And so we're going to do a second thing. We're going to do this in plenary, and what I'd love you to do is, if you ever do any of the things I'm about to mention, I'd like you to either put your hand up physically or use the little raise hand button when it comes up, you know, so that we can see people responding. So, do you ensure things will go well by ensuring your work is perfect? Do you ensure things will go well by preparing super thoroughly? Seems like you have to prepare, you know, much more than those other people who seem to find everything so easy. Do you sometimes maintain a low profile? Do you sometimes withhold your opinions and talents? So you're in a meeting, you've got something to say, and you think, oh no, I'm not going to say that, and somebody else says it, and you think, I can't believe it. Do you sometimes not finish important projects? And when you do succeed, do you sometimes think, oh, phew, I just fooled them again? Beautiful. That's so lovely. I can see all the pictures pinging and hands going up and hand signs being raised. Thank you so much for engaging with that. And I'll tell you why that matters in a second. But let's have a definition, shall we, of imposter syndrome. So people experience imposter syndrome when they dismiss their accomplishments and the recognition of others, and fear their success will disappear when others find out the awful secret that they are in fact imposters. And we can call this imposter syndrome, imposter feelings, fear of being found out. The key point here is other people recognize stuff in us and what we do well and our accomplishment, but we discount it, we dismiss it. And based on the number of hands that were shooting up and down in that session just now, imposter syndrome doesn't look like this. It isn't just you or me. It's your colleagues at the next table. It's the people sitting opposite you. It's the people in the breakout room, including quite a lot of those people who look super confident. So imposter syndrome actually looks like this. You know, it's most of us much of the time. A person who does a lot of study in this area, Gail Matthews in the US, does some research into imposter syndrome and did a sort of Uber study suggesting that about 3/4 of us experience imposter feelings at least at some point in our life. And at this point, I'd like to acknowledge another book, quite different in this area, which I absolutely love, which is my wife introduced me to, which is I'm Absolutely Fine by Annabelle Rivkin and Emily McMeekin. They actually have a gorgeous blog, very funny blog. I'm going to read you a quote from it, from the book. "Let me tell you something now and forever. Just because you are frightened doesn't mean you aren't brave. You are truly brave. Fear is a perfect indicator that attention must be paid. Never be ashamed of being frightened. Tell someone you are panicking. They're probably panicking too. We're all fucking panicking. It's one of the reasons we are Wonder Women, not perfect women, Wonder Women." And I bring this particular thought in now because if most of us are having these feelings, imagine how powerful it would be to admit it to each other and get on the journey together and support each other rather than being alone. And perhaps some of the people you're going to meet today, you're going to stay in contact after today, or this might be something you can take back to your workplace and enable people to share and get on the journey together. So we've already established the first of these 3 key points. The people around you feel it too. And we're going to come on to these second 2 points as we go through the session today. Now, another key part of accepting these feelings and thus being able to deal with them is understanding where they come from. And there are lots of factors that can contribute, but broadly they're in 2 buckets. We'll call the first situational factors. So we're going to zip through these. Well, you were raised by humans. That's helpful. Early messages of achievement, about achievement, success and failure run deep. So do any of you recognize you used to get all A's and one day you came home with your report with all A's on and 1 B and your parents said, "What's that B doing there?" Anybody ever have an experience maybe a little bit like that? You know, and if that sort of stuff happens to us, yes, thank you, Jamila. If that sort of stuff happens to us and we think, well, it's all about the grades, being loved seemed somehow to linked to being smart. Or at the other end of the spectrum, if we get lots of praise, no matter how well you did, you know, it's all about turning up, not about the winning, and other versions of that, that can make it difficult to differentiate between good and great. Family myths and labels. Anybody ever have any of these? The sensitive one, the smart one. Well, these bring with them the pressure either to live up to or to disprove the label. Yeah, thank you, Sally. One of the number of things my father said to me, my father's dead now, said to me as I'm a child, when I was a child, when I gave up on a particular homework thing, I thought we had a son who tries. And I hadn't realized until I sort of started doing some work on this in my mid-40s that how much that was stuck in my mind. I thought we had a son who tries. And among my memories of other things my father said to me when I went to comprehensive school, I got into Cambridge, and he said to me, "So why couldn't you get yourself into a good red brick university?" And when I started trying to deal with some of these feelings when I was 44, I remember asking him, "Are you proud of me?" And his answer was, "I don't use the P word." So my point here is, over and above sort of giving you a sense of some of the early things I think that contributed to my imposter journey, is that we're brought up by human beings. And the thing is, they're humans too. So sometimes understanding and forgiving our parents can help us to release ourselves and go forward. So what else? You're a student. You know, you're here to learn, not to think, not to try out, not to make mistakes. Maybe you got great grades at school and then you got to university and discovered you were just as good as everybody else. You weren't sort of at the top anymore. And some academic fields have quite impenetrable language. It seems almost by definition to make it hard for new people to get in. Maybe in your work, you're in an organizational culture that feeds self-doubt. What would we mean by that? Cultures that suggest that asking for help is a sign of weakness. Or maybe hostility is shown, you know, if work is not good. I certainly discovered that in some sort of tech industries and in some academic areas. Or you might work alone. And, you know, people who work alone experience isolation, self-doubt. They may lose perspective because they don't have other people around them to bounce ideas off. Or perhaps in a creative field, you know, and the thing about here is your work is public and it is defined by standards, artistic standards, literary standards that are subjective. And you tend anyway to always not be pleased with your own work. Maybe you're a stranger in a strange land. What do we mean by that? Maybe some of you have moved country or moved culture, moved work environment, and you feel like you're in a strange land. Or you maybe represent your entire social group. Because I'm a woman, because I'm disabled, or the only person or the first person of color, I have to get it right, or I'm going to let down everybody else in my group. So these are situational factors that can contribute. What about the other bucket, societal factors, external realities? Well, stereotypes, they matter because they become internalized as the truth. And of course there are many, but you know, here are some you may recognize. He's commanding, you are bossy. He's persistent, you are pushy. He's carefully weighing his options, you can't make up your mind. The cumulative effect of these mini put downs is that it takes its toll. Being female can mean you're held to higher standards. So for example, when orchestras use a screen to conceal the identity of auditioning musicians, female musicians are twice as likely to advance through the preliminary rounds and are 7 times as likely to actually get the place in the orchestra of multiple rounds, just by there being a screen. And female web designers get more freelance work when they present themselves online as men. I think less so for ladies of the generations I can see in this group, but perhaps for your mothers, there was this notion of men's and women's work while they grew up. Teachers, nurses, secretaries, social workers. And when they then went on perhaps to go into work in areas of more traditionally male, they maybe felt, do I really belong here? Resilience to criticism. So the other thing to say, obviously you've already noticed there are a lot of massive generalizations in what I'm saying, okay? So this will annoy some of you. I'm sort of going to apologize for that, but I'm trying to make some points here. And in most cases, what I'm saying, there is some genuine directional truth in this, okay? So let's take this one, resilience to criticism. Men tend to be more resilient to criticism than women. One reason for this is that they've grown up getting more of it. So one study done by Carol Dweck, who some of you will know, probably she's the author of Mindset, Growth Mindset, it's a fabulous book. And she did a study on sort of middle school children, and boys received, she discovered, 8 times more criticism to their conduct than girls. And one reaction to this, if you get this deluge of criticism, is you go, you know what, it's not true. So boys are adapting at an early age to externalize criticism and say it's not true. While they're doing that, at least we used to be, say, telling girls there was virtue in self-sacrifice, care, concern, connection. And what happens then sometimes in later life is we can get a little bit confused about, can I be caring and ambitious? And of course, the answer is yes. But society can conspire to confuse us. Yeah, I talked about that, sorry, okay. And then lastly, women tend to hold on to memories of their transgressions long after their usefulness as a learning has passed. So I'm going to read this to you. This is a quote from an American soccer coach of women's soccer. I can't do an American accent, sorry. I can go into a room of women and I can say, we have players that aren't fit. and they all think I'm talking about them individually. But if I did the same thing with men, the men on the team would go, yeah, coach is right. I'm the only one who's fit here. The rest of these guys are better get it together. Women internalize everything. So I don't know if some of you recognize that sense, which is, you know, when there's an issue, women will tend to pull it towards themselves and men will tend to push it away from themselves. So we know that this stuff is going on to embed imposter feelings in us, in people, especially people in minorities. And this can get in our way of getting into senior leadership roles. Yet, Gloria Felt, who's an author and speaker in this area, tells us studies by Ernst & Young, Catalyst, the World Bank, McKinsey, all discovered that once parliaments and corporate boards reach 30% female representation, the quality of decisions improve, the guys behave better, and there's less corruption. The 30% is very important. It's why tokenism doesn't work here. Under 30%, the minority adapts to the majority behaviours. Okay? When you get to around 30%, the minority is strong enough to start to change and develop the behaviours in the group. So I'm moving fast, okay, you know, partly because I'm doing a lot of talking in this first one, but this is sort of seeding some foundations. And we've covered a key foundation of understanding the factors that can lead to imposter feelings. And I suspect all of you noticed one or two of those and maybe made a note and go, oh, hold on, I recognise that in my life. So the point here is you didn't just make this stuff up, right? It happens to us. And a lot of it has got a lot of shoulds in it. We got shoulded quite a lot when we were young. Now we can move into the behaviours themselves. So we have unconscious coping strategies, coping and protecting strategies that we use to handle our imposter syndrome. Now these behaviours, strategies are not there to alleviate imposter syndrome. That's not their job. They're coping mechanisms we've developed, and their job is to protect us from the shame of being found out. You know, so it's our way of taking care of ourselves. And we touched on some of these when you were putting your hands up. That's one of the reasons I also wanted you to do that. So let's just run through some of these coping mechanisms. So over preparing and hard work. Right, everybody works hard these days, yes, of course, but this feels like it's the sole reason for your success. I just work harder than everybody else. It's a very difficult cycle to break because, of course, hard work does often pay off, right? It does improve your chances of doing well. But of course, the cycle of working harder and harder and harder has an end point, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. This was one of my issues when I'd had one of my promotions at Unilever. I worked harder and harder and harder. I started doing things like checking into a hotel in London instead of going home so that I could work an extra 3 or 4 hours in the evening and then get up at 5 and do an extra 3 or 4 hours in the morning. Wow, that was smart, wasn't it? I was working really, really hard. Holding back. If I'm going to fail, I'd rather people think it's because maybe I'm lazy or forgetful rather than I'm stupid or not good enough. So the less reasons we give people to judge our performance, the less chances you'll be judged. The less time you speak up, the less times you speak up in the meeting, the less opportunity you have to be judged. The less times you go for a promotion, the less chance you're going to be judged. Maintaining a low or ever-changing profile. Maybe finding roles or career areas where you can sort of work inconspicuously, or constantly changing roles. This is an unusual one, or sometimes it chimes as unusual, using charm or perceptiveness to win approval. So you find somebody you admire who you want to feel good about you, and you use your social skills to impress them, as well, of course, as doing great work. And when at some point they tell you you've done a great job, you dismiss the feedback, believing that the only reason that they've given you good feedback is they like you, which was, of course, one of the things you set out to make happen. Procrastination. Anybody here consider that they sometimes procrastinate? Maybe a little hand up, procrastinators in the room. Yeah, ping, 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 ping. Lovely. Yeah, we'll come back to procrastination. Thank you so much for putting your hands up. It's so nice of you, and all means I also get to see lots of pictures. So what is procrastination? It is the way to give yourself a built-in out. You tell yourself you work best under pressure. Maybe you do. But you also know there's a greater chance that quality will suffer. You're putting off the situation you fear that will lead to your eventual undoing. You're giving yourself a built-in out. You're delaying the moment of judgment. Never finishing. Now, procrastinators do at least finish. In this behavior, people come up with sort of alibis and say, well, I'm still working on it. Or it was never really, I was just exploring it. And lastly, self-sabotage. This is also one some people sort of go, what? So you do things subconsciously to undermine your very success. Show up late, drink the night before. So I did this with a group of 90 people in London Tech Ladies is the group. And a lady, when I was talking about this one, said, oh my God, now I know why I get pissed every night the night before a pitch. So, you know, you do things, or it might be you discover something about a job you're going for and you share that little bit of extra information with somebody else who's also going for the job because you're such a nice person. And it also means that they're going to be more likely to get it than you. Okay, that was a lot of talking. Thank you for staying with me. What I'd love you to do now is we're going to send you back into your groups, and I'd like you to have a think about, just take a couple of minutes now if you haven't already made one or two notes. Take a few seconds to look at this list. And then in your groups, I'd like you to tell each other about the mechanism that most resonates with you. Most of us rely on one strategy, but you might have two or three that you use at different times. I hope that was interesting and illuminating. I'm pretty convinced it will have been, but let's see. So it'd be lovely if we can hear a few people from their groups tell us something that came out for you, either an insight about yourself or somebody you were with, or a theme. What's something interesting from your session just now?
Yeah. So we could have probably stayed there for an hour to discuss this, of course, as you would realise. And Peter, I have, I now mentor, but I was vice president of Arden, etc. So despite all of those things, you still overthink things sometimes. I think there's always a bit with females of feeling a bit guilty. And in my experience, men don't suffer with that. And your idea of the football example was very good, the internal versus the external. Yeah. And I was saying to our group how quite often I've seen men who've not been particularly good, but they've moved on to jobs before they've been fired and someone said you're lousy. Whereas females, we stay because we want to do something not 100%, 110% right. And yes, there's a fundamental difference in our behaviours.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing that, Susan. I agree. Thank you. Someone else?
I will, Peter.
Yeah.
Joe. I can't see who's talking. Hi. Yeah, from our group, I think we all identified with the fact that we overwork. And I think, you know, for different reasons, but some of it is for self-affirmation or because you feel you need to justify your position, having returned to work, having had children, and also a lot of procrastination as well. So I think these are all just things, you know, that manifest themselves as a fact of self-doubt, really.
Yes, beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And you're right. I mean, the year after maternity is the most usual time to lose women from the workplace. So managing women back into the workplace, because you know, what a surprise if you're feeling a bit imposterish if you missed perhaps a whole year's worth of stuff going on. Thanks for sharing that as well, Joe. And maybe one other.
I was just going to say that sometimes the things that you're feeling are really internal and in your head. Just because I was in a breakout group with another colleague and thing that she mentioned, I don't see in her at all. So I found that quite interesting.
Yes, that's a big, and we were chatting about that, Carrie, Ellen and I in the group. Look, so thank you for sharing that, Kelly, and thank you all. And as you say, that's probably an hour's worth that we could enjoy just on that chunk. But so to pick up that point, a couple of points there, just while we're here, is, so what's going on all the time is your inner self is seeing other people's outer self, right? So Kellyanne, what you're talking about there is, and what do we all do? We do our very best to put a nice, confident, glossy outer self on, right? Because, you know, that, you know, something, you know, we put uniforms on, we do all sorts of things, bit of lippy, you know, if we're allowed to have a haircut, who knows what, right? But what we're doing, and all many of these things are also that I'm really prepared, I've got on my files, right? But so we see everybody else's outer self, and what's seeing it is our inner self. And the thing is, their inner selves are just as usually full of voices as ours, but that's not what we're experiencing, which is why the sharing and the ability to open groups up and talk about this is so important. And building on Susan's point, there's a not so well researched syndrome called irrational over self-confidence syndrome, which you will not be surprised to hear tends to be experienced by men, you know, more than women. And these are indeed the people who go and get jobs that they don't really know how to do. They fuck it up. They get rid of the best people. Other people won't join them. Just before the whole house falls down, they move on, right? And somebody is left, you know, to deal with it, right? And so many of you have, I know Susan's experienced some of those, and you know, I've seen a few as well. So irrational over self-confidence syndrome. We're not going to be encouraging you to do that, but we are absolutely, as this session goes on, going to be talking about confidence and how to boost it. Okay, now, so we've talked about these protection strategies. The thing is, we pay a price for protection. What do we mean by that? We pay a price for protection. So even though our pattern serves a protective function, we pay a price for it. And some costs are the same for all of us. For example, allowing fear to steal the joy of the journey. And some costs are more specific to each of us as individuals. So I'm going to give you a few examples, and then we're going to give you some more time to look at this. But these are three sort of sentences that are useful to complete. And I'm going to, as I said, I'm going to give you some examples. If I never change this pattern of holding back, I'll only get dead-end jobs that don't fully utilize my gifts and passions. Or maybe I'll earn less money, which in turn will limit my possibility of doing the things I want to do with my life. The price I would pay for non-stop over-preparing and hard work is my health will suffer. Unnecessary psychological stress and fatigue, and perhaps I'll be an absent parent and miss out on important stages and times in the lives of my children, which I can't go back to. The opportunities I would miss because of procrastinating is not to learn new things about myself and the world, and the chance to get exciting roles where I perhaps can make a positive and exciting difference to the world. So what I'd like you to do now, those were just some suggestions, is, you know, back to your Explorer's Guide. Hopefully you're all using these and seeing that it now nicely builds as you go along. You've got these 3 questions in your Explorer's Guide. And I'd like you to, we're going to put you into your rooms, and if you would take the first few minutes on your own, 2 or 3 minutes, to write some answers to these. One of these questions may sing to you more than another. One of them may not work for you at all. So answer 1 or 2 with whatever comes out of your pen, and then have a run around the group. If somebody hasn't spoken much, get them to start. Try and make sure within the group everybody's got a voice. And we're going to give you around 10 minutes again for this whole session, including so individual reflection and then sharing in the group. Welcome back. And let's hear from some people we haven't heard from yet. Some thoughts about what did an insight, a discovery, something that you'd like to share from your group just now?
I'll do, I don't mind.
Lovely.
Saying from our group. Hi, I'm Corinne, everyone. Well, all of us in our group had a similar one. It overriding came back to about holding back, that we all tend to hold back for various reasons. And if we do that, then we'll never know what we could have achieved, which means that we'll be living in the what if land, and perhaps be a little bit frustrated with ourselves, thinking about, well, what could have I achieved if I hadn't have done this? So we don't want to live with regret. So overall, you know, we'd miss out on how successful we could have been and ultimate happiness as well.
Yes. Wonderful. Thank you, Corinne. Beautiful. Someone else.
I was actually, oh, sorry.
No, go on.
Come on, Emily.
No, thank you. No, I was just going to say I was actually in Corinne's group as well. And the other one we all spoke about was over prepping and overworking ourselves. So one thing for me is that I do like to prepare for things. And even if I do probably know exactly what I'm going to say anyway, I like to be prepared. But actually that overworking and over preparing, that could result in, you know, stress levels rising and never being able to actually relax and enjoy life. And even though work is important and I want to grow and develop at the same time, it's important to have that balance of, you know, work and life.
Yes. Thank you. Wonderful. Very true. Carla.
Hi, yeah, from Carla. From our group, it was mostly around, you know, procrastination, but also sort of overworking and being, you know, undervalued. And so a lot of things that came out of that was, you know, the need for, the need for balance, as well as also just, you know, how a lot of these like things, whether it's procrastination or not speaking up for ideas, can hinder our, you know, professional growth, as well as
Yes.
just finding the balance.
Yes, absolutely. You know, thank you all three of you. You know, I think that sort of thought about, you know, balance in life, and yeah, not having the journey. You know, not having the journey. It's such a crazy thing. You know, the only person who holds the pen that writes the story of your life is you. So, you know, I think what you want to do is make sure when you turn around at the end, you've got the story that you wanted, not the story someone told you you should have.
You're going to make us cry.
Good. It's thank you, Aviva. That's yeah. It's actually quite usual for there to be tears in the breakouts. So you know, because I just think it, you know, like, I mean, so am I going to allow myself this? I've got to be careful because we're on time. I'm going to start going off piste, which is not smart, but I'll allow myself one here. There are sort of three broad questions, right? So some of you in that earlier stage of life, and there's a version of this question, which is, who am I going to be? Who am I going to be? Then there's people, you know, around my stage of life and earlier, let's say somewhere between late 30s, early 40s, and maybe 60, and the version of a question is this it? And then there's the one about 70 plus, which is like 75 or 80 for some people who are, you know, determined to live a long time, which is, was that what I wanted? And the point is, the thing is, by the time you get to was that what I wanted, it's too late. So you've only got two answers. Yes, happy. No, not happy. So, you know, earlier on, a version of, is this it? Is this what I want? You know, you don't know who you're going to be yet, necessarily. I'm still not sure. But, you know, you're developing, you know, and learning. And we're going to come on to that. But the point is, enjoy the journey. And, you know, rather than worrying too much about the end. So, you know, allowing yourself to work through some of this stuff that we're working through today is really important at the stage that you're doing it. Okay. So we've already had a look at our own specific answers to how we avoid the no talent police, our coping strategies. And then we've had a look at the price we pay for all that protection. And now you're thinking, did I really sign up for all this misery, or was I going to sort of get, you know, something, you know, positive and useful out of this session? So let's have a look at, you know, some how to make the change. And we can do that more easily now we've laid some foundations of the understanding. But the thing is, letting go of a habitual response is not easy. But, you know, growth is not designed to be easy. It's not designed to make us comfortable. Growing pains. Its role is to enable us to be our best selves and to enjoy the life we really want, to feel fulfillment along the way. And the gorgeous thing about human beings is we are malleable. You can start to make a shift. You can start to change and develop at any time in your life, at any age. So why not now? And even that sentence is sometimes a bit shocking for people. So we can change. When people say that's how I am, for me as a coach, that's like, oh, this is gorgeous. This is going to be so good. Because, like, do you want to be how you are, or do you want to be the best version of yourself? Hello, that's so nice, young Eviva. So, you know, so we can make change at any time. So let's have a little go at shifting gear here a little bit. And one of the first things we can do is to claim our accomplishments on a gut level. So what we're going to ask you to do now is make a start, and you'll see in your Explorer's Guide, there's a gap for this one, Reflection 5, with you know, 5 points. So what I'd like you to do is write down 2, 3, 4, 5 achievements that you have made, large or small, and specifically what you did to deliver that achievement. Now this could be, I got my dream job after 100 applications and what I did. It could be, I designed a brilliant holiday for me and my friends, what I did. It could be, I helped a charity. It could be, I climbed a mountain. It could be, I lived with my partner in an apartment while we were renovating it and I didn't kill them. Right? But a list of your achievements, large and small, professional or non-professional, and specifically what you did to deliver that achievement. And what I'd like you to do in your group then, and we'll come back to the second point when we come back, is we're going to send you back into your groups to spend the first 3, 4, 5 minutes writing 2 or 3 for yourself, and then run around the group and each share one. Okay, and if you're going at speed and you get all the way around the group, share another one. But I'd be very surprised if you do. We're going to give you 10 minutes for that in total. Any questions? No, great, go, let's go. So let's hear, how did that feel? How was that for you? Let's hear from 1 or 2 people, and ideally someone who hasn't spoken, but you know, whoever's got something they'd like to say about that session.
I think feeling I got from ours was it made us feel. I certainly feel a little bit more confident and stronger, and I think it gives you a bit of a positive boost really when you share those experiences, you know, those achievements. But I think there was definitely a feeling of what was coming through from what we were all saying was resilience, I think bravery, and pushing yourself. They were the things from the stories that people were telling that I think were really kind of coming through. But Vicky and I from our group both discovered we're type 1 diabetics, and I think that was something that we both had in common with our achievements, was that I guess obviously juggling that with you know, with day-to-day life, and having to kind of, especially working and dealing with the condition and stuff like that. I think we definitely felt like we clicked there, that we feel quite proud of the fact that we do that. Obviously there was other things we all spoke about, but I think that was one, that sort of perseverance and positivity kind of.
Wonderful, Olivia.
Kind of thing. Yeah,
that's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. Someone else.
Hi guys, I'm Rupert from Delilah. Sorry, I joined in a little bit late, but the last session was interesting because although we all do very different jobs, it was all about overcoming fear, actually, and it was either fear of stepping into a job and being judged against somebody else, or fear of people kind of rejecting your creative work or being negative about creativity, or even the fear of sharks in one instance. You know, I think everybody's achievements was about just you know, sort of feeling the fear and but kind of pushing past that and creating something that they could be proud of.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
Pleasure.
And one more.
Yeah, can I?
Please.
I think the joy, because obviously so far a lot of the stuff had been negative, and we are talking about imposters, and the joy you get with sharing success, because you set achievements large and small, and you could see the whole sort of, there was a lot of big smiles, both visible and invisible, in our group about talking about those things. And it's one of the things I firmly believe, that companies need to share regularly, not just we've done this month's target, but small things. Like someone's run the marathon. Well, that's not such a small thing, but those little things, sharing the joy, I think it gives everyone such a boost and a lift.
Yes, beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Well, I mean, and on that theme, what would stop you doing this in your teams? Just this bit, like instead of, you know, in a team session on a Monday morning, go like, just like everybody to write down 2 achievements, and then we're going to share them. Or maybe you don't tell them, you just tell them to write them down first, and then you say, right now I'd like to share that. And because you're right, what it does, I mean, so much of us is really about body chemistry, but one of the things you're doing when you do that positive stuff is moving the body chemistry into a positive place. You also learn stuff about your colleagues you didn't know, which is like incredibly good. Like, what? You know how to, what? So you're really good under pressure. What? So you built a house. So I would very much encourage you, just as a little takeaway from today, is like, why not do that, a version of that every now and then in your teams, as a nice little way of learning about each other and getting people into a positive place, and you'll certainly, you know, do something good. And yes, on this point about overcoming fear, it's a really good thought. You know, the hero's journey. Ultimately, so much of what we're dealing with is feelings of fear of our own, and so how do you deal with those? And again, learning from other people that they've been through those journeys, and things are possible, and perhaps the things we're scared of are the same things other people have been scared of, and you can get through it. It's super helpful, right? So all of this builds the theme of get into self-nourishing groups, nurturing groups that will, you know, that you can lean on. Peer groups are so powerful. All right, we're moving into the sort of effectively the last session now. But what I want to say on this first is, so you made a start with that list. What I would love to say to you is take an hour or 2 and finish that list for yourself, and you're going to have 20 or 30 things on it. And then, you know, sit back from it and go back to it a day or 2 later and just have a look at it and see the patterns in the things you did to achieve those things. And you'll start to find another way, another lens on your strengths, by just seeing that, oh God, what? So it turns out I'm pretty good, you know, under pressure. It turns out that I can get over my fears. It turns out that I collaborate well with people. So do go and do it, you know, complete the list. It's a really nice one to have. Also, when you get back after a shit day, get the list out, you know, and have a look at it. The other point here is, and that's why this point is about claiming your accomplishments on a gut level. So yes, it's lovely when the company shares stuff, but if we're going to shift our own bodies, our own behaviors, you have to internalize this stuff. And this other point about make an agreement with yourself that the next time someone compliments your work, you'll say thank you and nothing more. Anybody ever say, oh, it was nothing? So ping the hands. Oh, it was nothing. Oh, it wasn't really me. Oh, it was the team. oh no, don't be silly, or oh, I was lucky. Yeah, bing, 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 bing. Right. So how does that make the person feel? I can tell you how it makes me feel when I give somebody a thank you and they go, oh no, no, it was nothing, I was just a bit of luck. You go, well, that feels shit to be on the end on, thank you. So, you know, if you the best thing you can do if somebody compliments your work or say thank you. And not necessarily anything else. Just say thank you and savor the moment. Okay, so what have we already covered? The people around you feel it too. And now we're going to have we've got a whole journey through what is it, what do I feel, what are my coping strategies, how can I start to come through this? And the first behavioral change we've said is, well, I'm going to explore my achievements and claim them at a visceral level. Now we're going to move into some more obvious behaviors. And the point you know, I want to make here is some people think if I feel better, then I'll do something differently. It doesn't work like that. So you have to change your behaviors and the feelings will follow. You have to change your behaviors and then the feelings will follow, which is why it's a bit scary. Right? If you wait for your feelings to become more confident, it's going to be too late. It's going to be a very, very long wait. And one of those that we're going to touch on is saying yes and learning through the opportunity. But we're going to spend some time on this now, quite a chunk of time. And I really love this quote in this area from Hillary Clinton. I try to take criticism seriously, but not personally. And why is that useful here is because a key area to deal with is to reframe how we respond to failure, mistakes, and criticism. And we touched on this earlier with the sports coach story, but we're going to do a room reflection, a hands up reflection. So what I'd love you to do is put your hand up, please, if you hear something now which you do or feel. When things go wrong, I automatically blame myself. When I make a mistake, I have a really hard time forgiving myself. I often walk away from a conversation obsessing over what I said or failed to say. I remember every dumb thing I ever said or did. Nice. I take even constructive criticism personally as a proof of my ineptness. Beautiful, thank you so much. And I'm sure I'm not quite sure what everybody's different screen is showing, but I see a sort of moving list of 6 or 7 pictures, or 6 or 7 pictures. And I think everybody's got their hand up now. So for at least one of those, and a lot of you probably were pressing a number of times. So here we are again, you know, you are not alone. You are not alone. And a key to ditching imposter syndrome is to learn new self-affirming responses to failure, mistakes, and criticism. So the thing is, we all face challenges. It's inevitable. The difference between feeling like an imposter and not is how we respond to challenges, all right? So you've all heard those annoying quotes, it's not how you fall, it's how you bounce, and all that stuff. And the thing is, there is a truth to all, you know, there is a truth underlying all of those. You can sort of choose the one you like the most, and I'm going to feed you a few more of them in a minute. But the underlying and most critical thought here, which is inherent to the journey we're on this afternoon, is that it's the difference between feeling like an imposter and not. And that is going to be changed by how we respond to challenges. How we respond to challenge. And we're all going to have challenges. You can't protect yourself from having challenges in your life. If you do, as we discovered earlier, you're going to be limiting your chance of enjoying the journey. So where you place the onus of responsibility for failure directly impacts your options for managing it. What do we mean by that? What do we mean by that? So the first and most important thing here is don't internalize it. It's about the work, it's not about you. So I have to, in my coaching with people often, I can feel myself doing it. It's like, you know, it's about the work, it's not about you, right? This thing went wrong, I wasn't wrong, right? It was wrong. It didn't go how I wanted, as opposed to I'm a fool, I'm an idiot, right? So the more you can focus on the thing and what you can learn, automatically makes it less about you and therefore more about growth and going forward. So this is really a huge one, right? So focus on the stuff and what you can do about the stuff, what you can learn from it, not about, oh, am I a bad person? Was I not good enough? And you know, it's such an important reframe, and there are all sorts of little tactics around that. But if you just work on that thought, and this, underneath this thought, which is, life is not a test; it's a non-stop opportunity to learn. So every time you can change that feeling from I'm being tested here, so this is an opportunity to learn. And what can I learn about it? You'll be moving yourself forward in this space. And language is really important here. So for those of you who haven't screwed up your kids yet, or haven't had kids yet to screw up, this is why you talk about you did really well in that race just now, as opposed to you're a good runner, right? Or that homework you did that homework well, as opposed to you're really clever. Because if you label the behavior as opposed to the person, you've got room to develop and change. So I was a good person yesterday when I ate all my dinner, but I don't like my dinner today. What, am I now a bad person? What a good boy, ate all his dinner. Oh, bad boy, didn't eat your dinner. Or welcome eating disorder, right? So the point here is label the behavior, not the person, and do that with your work colleagues as well as your children. I'm pretty sure it's okay with dogs. So I don't feel too bad when I go good boy to one of my 3 spaniels. I think that's okay. But it's quite a serious point to be made about children and colleagues. The other one here is you can't control what people think. You can only control your own response. So anytime you hear yourself thinking, he should just think this, you need to sort out your mind on this. You're on a hiding to nothing, right? What you can control is your response. So I love presenting, you might have noticed, but I used to be quite affected if there was people in the room who sort of sat still and didn't look very happy. Because it's why it's so lovely working with Carrie, because she gives me lots of positive reinforcement. But some people don't, and it used to make me think, oh shit, this is going really badly. Oh no, what am I going to do to get that person to enjoy the session? Well, I can't affect. Maybe they're just a quiet person. Maybe they're a bit introverted. Maybe they don't have much body language. Maybe that's how they absorb. But I was mind reading, and my response was to panic. And when I learned, you know what? Who knows what's going on in their mind? But there seems to be quite a lot of people having a good time. I'm going to get on with it and enjoy it. I started enjoying my presenting a lot more. So you can't control what's going on in other people's minds. Don't try, but you can control your own response. And then seek feedback and feed forward. Right? So feedback it's an overused word, and most of us are appalling at it, either giving it or taking it from other people, because we only really want to hear stuff that affirms our positive self-image, and yet we're being told to do it in order to hear about the things we can develop on the whole. And also most of us don't like upsetting other people, so do we tend to give poor feedback? But it's so useful. And the point here is, if you don't get it, it doesn't go away, it goes somewhere else. So if somebody's got something they need to say about you and you don't let them say it to you, they're going to go and say it to somebody else, which is a lot less useful because it means you can't learn. So I would very much encourage you to seek feedback, and even better is feed forward. And the thought here is, instead of saying to people, okay, can you tell me what I did well and not so well last year? You say, you can probably work out the 2 or 3 things you need to develop. So you say, next year, I want to work and improve on how I manage senior stakeholders. Have you got any thoughts for me? So that's called feed forward, and people are much better at giving you feed forward than feedback. What you're getting is feedback, right? But it doesn't feel like it, because they're going to be they're thinking, shit, I know, I've noticed you're terrible at that. And they're going to give you some ideas, maybe some advice and some thoughts, right? But they're going to give it much more freely. So feedback is powerful. It doesn't go away if you don't hear it. Better you hear it, and even better still, a better way to release it is feed forward. In this space, one of the things I like, some of you will have heard of Kim Scott, possibly. She's a sort of big player in the tech world, the California world, you know, the Googles and Facebooks and all that malarkey. And she's got a book called Radical Candor. It actually, for me, it's one of those books that's only got 3 or 4 thoughts in it, but there's a lot of nice examples. And certainly she's incredibly impressive. But the one I like the most from this is Radical Candor itself. And based on this point about feedback, so she says to develop great relationships with the people who work for you. And let's just talk about direct reports. Do these 2 things: care personally and challenge directly. So if we talk about feedback, the point is, if you see somebody doing something suboptimally, tell them in a good manner. And there are some very simple rules about how to give feedback. I can help you on that, not now, but do it soon. Do it soon after the event. So that would be a version of what she calls challenge directly. If you wait 6 months, you know, until 3 months until a review, you haven't really helped anybody. And at the same time, care personally. You need to know what's going on in people's lives. 40% of what they're doing has got nothing to do with what you know about in the work. It's because they've just lost a parent. Their children are annoying them. Their dog's just died. They've discovered that they've got an illness. You need to know this stuff. You don't have to be their best friends, but you do need to know what's going on in their lives. Radical candor. Care personally, challenge directly. At this point, I'm going to go back to one of my favorite quotes from I'm Absolutely Fine. Idiots happen. You can't hate everyone annoying because you end up toxifying your soul. You don't have to love them either. Dickheads off a duck's back, basically. Energy is finite, so don't waste yours. When you go home on the tube, hallelujah, please maybe be able to get back on the tube scene, and you spend all of your time being cross about something somebody else did, right? It's wasting your energy. It's putting it's putting cortisol into your bloodstream, not theirs. They didn't even notice it. They don't care what you think, right? So don't waste your time. Dickheads off a duck's back. Okay, so these are all lots of tips and thoughts, and we're going to keep moving. This is quick fire. And most of these are written down in your Explorer's Guide. The difference is how people think when they face a challenge. We've said that point. So what are some reframes? What are some reframes? Reframing is a super powerful tool. Well, how about we go from why me to why not me? Why would I get that role? To why wouldn't I get that role? Just change the dialogue. Why not me? Let's have a go. Let's have a go. Or, oh my God, I've got no idea what I'm doing. Why don't we change that to, wow, I'm going to learn a lot. So I do a lot of that, right? I do a lot of that. You know, I don't really know what I'm doing on this. You go, you know what? I'm going to learn a lot. And I know, and I'm going to be confident in myself that I will learn. There is a difference between confidence and competence. So I want to get back to this point. This is not irrational self-confidence. So this is not those people who make stuff up and make a mess. We're just saying accepting that you can become competent whilst you're in a role. So be confident enough to say yes to the new challenge, to the new role. And while you're in the role, ask people for help. Ask people who know. Develop your competence. Why is acting more confident than you feel important? Well, this is a nice quote from James Taylor. I started out being a songwriter pretending I could, and it turned out that I could do it, and it turned out that I could. So that's what we're talking about here. It's that shift from I can't to I can. And it comes from taking risks, owning the wins and learning from the losses. So be aware the door of opportunity can close quickly. Ladies, and we talked about this, Eleanor and Carrie and I talked about this, ladies who look at, or sensitive men, or all sorts of people who look at a job spec with 49 things on it and go, I can't do the last 2 and don't apply. You know, those job specs are appalling. If any of you are writing those job specs, stop doing it, right? You're not helping, okay? It's not helping, right? But in any case, when you see a job spec and you think, you know, I could do that job, say yes. Apply for it and be prepared to work hard and learn while you're in the job. Ask others who know stuff how. They will help you because the door of opportunity will close quickly. And somebody who you know will go and get that job and do it less well than you could. So why would you let yourself down? And it's the same about putting your hand up in a meeting or just being determined to say something. Say it, right? It's not going to be stupid. Be heard, right? Because and then you won't kick yourself at the end, say, oh, FFS, that other person said exactly what I was going to say, and I didn't get the points. I didn't get seen. Reframing nerves and fear into excitement. It's the same chemistry, right? Adrenaline, you know, it's the same body chemistry, but it's got a different edge to it. So instead of saying I'm feeling nervous, say I'm excited. Right? So saying I'm getting nervous about this thing that's coming, say I'm really excited about it. Same body chemistry, but you shift how it affects you. Think of times when you've taken risks and it worked well and apply it forward, or think of times when you felt confident. So when I used to go to job interviews or big meetings, I would sit in the car or sit in the toilet beforehand and think about a time when I had felt really confident. Close my eyes and see it. Those of you, anybody who's done any work on neuro-linguistic programming, this is not, I didn't make this stuff up, right? You know, like this is a relatively simple and well-known technique, but visualize a time when you felt wonderful, perhaps confident in the moment. And I don't mean in general, I mean an actual one. Smell the smells, see the people. What was the color, was the air? Who could you see? What were they saying? What were the sounds? And again, what you're shifting is your body chemistry. You're shifting your body chemistry into a positive place. And then you will be calmer when you go into that meeting. Recognizing that fulfilling your potential will benefit others. Some people need to know this is going to help other people. Well, the more you fulfill your potential and are seen and can role model it, the more you will benefit others. And thus help and raise and mentor the next generation of strong girls and sensitive boys, right? Because you are out there doing this stuff. Now, there should have been, having been way ahead of time, I somehow got lost in there and used it all up. So reflection 7 is for you, you can easily do this after the session, is just run back through all the stuff. And as I say, most of the last 20 minutes, the keynotes are down there in your Explorer's Guide. And what I would love you to do is, and what we'll do is we'll just do a mini plenary version now instead, is choose 2 or 3, underline them or circle them or tick them, some things that appeal to you most and that you could try out, or that you will try out, you choose to try out. And this point is change the behavior, try something out and it'll work, or it won't work and you'll learn from it, okay? But make a commitment to yourself, and ideally what you would have done is make that commitment to your group. But I got carried away and we haven't got time for the last one. So what instead it would be lovely is if in plenary, 2 or 3 people would call out something that they've seen there that appeals to them and say, I'm going to give that a go. Or I like that insight, that's just a useful light bulb for me. Someone do me a favor and call one out.
I love the idea of the list of achievements. So I'm thinking, how can we bring that into team meetings, or how do we, because we've got a field-based team, how do we bring a platform where people can share those achievements, and then that allows us to acknowledge them and thank them as well, because we're not always aware of them. Beautiful, thank you, Vanessa. Someone else, maybe someone we haven't heard at all today, that would be so nice.
For me, it's just remembering the it's Liam Gallagher as well, in terms of why me, why not me. That I think is absolutely beautiful, because it's so simple. It's something that should be top of mind all the time. And whenever we start to feel those little doubts and worries and the imposter starts approaching, I am just going to mentally switch that and say, yeah, well, why not me?
Beautiful. Thank you, Vicky, for that commitment to the group. Lovely. Someone else? Even if you've spoken before.
Confidence comes from taking risks, and I think that holding that true will just help many people to step over and step up, owning the wins, learning from the losses. I think it goes not just professionally, it goes personally as well, taking risks. And women generally are less likely to do that. So I think that's a brilliant insight.
Lovely, thank you, Susan. And someone else. One more.
Enjoy the journey.
Yes. Yes. Do you want to say anything more about that?
Yeah, I think sometimes you kind of get to, well, I especially get too in my head, and you kind of miss out on the moment, and the moment and the journey is kind of half of it, really, isn't it? So to avoid you kind of looking back in regret at things you didn't get to enjoy because you were too worried, it's quite important to just be in the moment and embrace it and just go with the flow as much as you can anyway.
Wonderful, Jamila, thank you so much. Okay, thank you all. So I think we've touched on today and discovered that people around you feel it too. There are behaviours you can change, and when you change those behaviours, the feelings will follow. And a really important one of those is to say yes and learn through the opportunity. And when you do that, you'll do it for yourself, for her, you'll do it for them. And in the words of wonderful Will Smith, being realistic is the most commonly travelled road to mediocrity. So don't be too realistic. Equally, in the worlds of wonderful Emily and Annabelle, onwards and sideways. Static is no good, rut is bad. But sometimes we go wonky before we soar. Momentum is the thing, measured momentum. Understanding that life is made up of many chapters and that this will not be the one to derail you. That is not an option, gently does it. So, you know, reach high and be gentle on yourself. Momentum is the key. And I would just wonder if you've discovered, back to my commitment at the beginning, if you've discovered one insight and one action you can take, one useful shift of mindset or action or change behavior you take, would you put your hand up with the, probably with a little mechanism, with a little hand, and let's just see if we got most people to make a little discovery today. Lovely, thank you so much. That's, well, I shall have my Wednesday night bottle of wine. Wednesday's a drinking day. With some level of contentment. So I'll probably hand it back. That's it there. I'm happy to stay on afterwards for a Q&A if anybody wants to, but I leave that absolutely in the hands of Sally, Carrie, Eleanor and the gang. But if not, then I am Peter. You've met me. You can see me on bravelyyhonestlygenerously.com. You can find me on LinkedIn. If you've got questions, then feel free to reach out to me. And obviously I'm a coach as well, so I do a lot of one-on-one and team coaching, and I can do these seminars as well for other groups. Little sales pitch at the end there. Sally, over to you.
I honestly thought that was fantastic today. I love these kind of sessions. I've been so looking forward to it, Peter, and I can't thank you enough. I think you always keep learning. I've definitely taken away a lot from the whole session and the breakout group. So I thank everybody who was in the great breakout group with me, because I know it's probably a bit weird having someone from CW there. So yeah, I just want to say thank you. And Peter, I'd love to invite you back to CW at a point in the future. I think everyone's taken a tremendous amount from this today. And certainly for me, it's procrastination is my biggest kind of thing that I need to get around. So look out for some exciting things coming from CW that I've been sitting on for a few weeks and a few months. And so I just wanted to thank you all, and thank you all for your continued support. We love talking to you, we love meeting you, and we very much hope to see you soon, hopefully in person. So thank you. And again, if anyone wants to ask questions of Peter, we can keep this running, so we don't need to shut it off. So if anybody does have questions, please do ask away.
Thank you, Sally, and thank you everybody for your participation.